Hello, welcome to episode 236 of Herpetological Highlights. My name is Tom Major. Co-hosting with me, as always, is Ben Marshall.
Hello, hello.
And we've got an episode today about geckos. Yeah, we like geckos.
We do love geckos. And they're fascinating morphology, right? I mean, what's kind of the first thing you think of when you think of geckos?
They can lick their eye.
That's exactly it. They can lick that. No. A purposeful misdirection here. It's their feet. It's sticking to stuff.
They're sticky, guys. They're the sticky lizards. They're famous for that. You know, and if you're on holiday with someone who doesn't know anything about lizards and they see a lizard, they'll say, a gecko. They're sorry, some of the most well-known gecko.
Yes.
They're some of the most well-known lizards in the world. And yeah, they're sticky. They stick to stuff.
Iconic.
You know, not all of them are sticky. We know this. Some of them are stickier than others. You don't really catch leopard geckos sticking to stuff very much. But there's like
they're an outrageously widespread group too. So you've got geckos in all sorts of habitats and situations.
Hundreds and hundreds of species.
Right.
But so this paper, let's introduce it. This one's by Pillai, Riedel, Wirth, Allen-Ankins, Nordberg, Edwards, and Schwarzkopf, 2025. What's the point? The functional role of claws in pad-bearing taxa, Proceedings of the Royal Society B. So this paper's entitled, What's the Point? There's another paper about gecko claws called Get to the Point. Something. So it's obviously
I enjoy
common theme.
These sorts of titles. Fully.
Yeah, I used to like them more. Now I'm more of a just get to the point kind of a guy, I think. But yeah, there's no harm in it.
Get to the point.
Maybe we need a little bit more whimsy though. Maybe we need more whimsy.
I think the title's a perfect place for it. You remember when you've got shorthand references back to titles, especially when authors are shared and things. You don't want to say, oh, it's that someone so et al. 20 whatever paper. You want to say, oh, it's the what's the point paper. Oh, it's the get to the point paper. Oh, it's the da-da-da-da paper. But look, I mean, I find it a lot easier referring to my own papers that have those weird sort of half-joke titles as part of the prefix to the rest of the title. They didn't dominate the title. Far easier.
Fair enough.
Than the dry ones.
Big win for humour and whimsy. I think it's fair enough. So this one, they're talking about adhesive pads. And historically, the kind of common knowledge is that gecko adhesive pads are used to cling onto smooth surfaces with very little roughness, while their claws are used to grip onto more rough surfaces which have larger bumps, sort of more rough surfaces. Obviously...
Tracks, right? You're trying to match the surface of your feet or claws to the indentations and surface that you're on, right? I think there's a sort of, macro, large-scale roughness will be the large-scale, sort of bigger bit of the foot, which would be the claw compared to the little ridges on the underside that are going to fit with a little ridged or smoothed surface. I think is the logic, right?
Yeah.
Key and lock.
And so key and lock. And a gecko's toe pads are they're made up of these lamellae, which are they're sort of like...
Wrinkles.
They basically are wrinkles with like deep grooves in between them. And those kind of like...
If you hyper-exaggerated your fingerprints.
If your fingerprints all became like really, really, really furrowed and deep, you're basically right. That's exactly what it is. And so the idea is that these little indentations can kind of allow them to grip. And there are some complicated papers about that, but we're just kind of broadly focusing on their sticking ability today. But the thing is that all of this work, which has been done in the past, which suggests that their sticky pads are useful for sticking onto smooth things and their claws are useful for sticking onto rough things, all of that research, that body of work, which isn't massive, but it all comes from Asian geckos. So those are like house geckos, Hamidactylus, tokay geckos, which is gecko. And so their family Gekkonidae, which is a different family than the ones they have in Australia, which is Diplodactylidae. And they're different to the Gekkonidae Asian geckos. They are evolutionarily distinct. They're noticeably different in the structure of their adhesive pads. And instead of the kind of more usual Asian-style toe pads, these ones have kind of broad leaf-shaped pads that end with small claws. And they're known for clinging well to both smooth and rough surfaces, although they are thought to have difficulty with like really fine textured ones. But all that information that we already know about the Australian lineage of sticky geckos kind of suggests that this simple idea that claws work best on rough surfaces and adhesive pads work best on smooth ones may not fully explain the clinging abilities of this Australian lineage of Diplodactylid geckos. And so, yeah, they're kind of this alternative model for looking at how claws and adhesive pads interact. And so they got a bunch of them from two genera, Odora and Stropurus, which is the velvet and spiny-tailed geckos. And they had a few different species.
Some of them are absolutely stunning species, particularly the velvet geckos. Holy smokes, the patination on some of these guys are just outrageous.
And because they're called velvet geckos, I think that's because they look so smooth. They look so They've got like smooth.
But it's sort of like a matte finish on some of them. It's a very, velvety look. They're great.
Some nice yellows. But yeah, they also had a mixture of ones which were rock-dwelling, so Saxicolus. Some were sort of tree-based generalists. New word in here, scansorial, climbing trees.
Scansorial, I had to look that one up, yeah.
Same.
So that is really suited to climbing, right?
Suited to climbing. They're climbers. So you've got some which like rocks. You got, one species likes rocks. You've got a couple that like trees in general, be it climbable, alive trees or fallen logs. And then you've got these Furus species, which are like shrub specialists. So they mostly spend their time on leaves, it would seem.
Little trees. They're not getting too high off the ground, essentially.
They know their place. And so, yeah, the interest of these authors was to try and work out, what are these claws doing? What are these pads doing? What role are they each serving in terms of the geckos sticking to stuff? And there's a few things I liked about this paper. They used the sandpapers, which I thought was quite clever. So they had a series of different roughness of sandpapers, which are the different grains of sandpapers. But they also managed to prove that those sandpaper granularities were biologically relevant.
I really, really like this too. They've got this wonderful diagram that's sort of showing, so they've got three coarsenesses of sandpaper. What is it? P40, P60, and P80 for people who know what that means in terms of sandpaper.
All the woodworkers in the podcast audience right now are like, oh yeah, that's some good grit.
Yeah, but they fit wonderfully in this gamut of naturally occurring roughnesses of surfaces that these geckos
quite perfectly
are dealing with. And they went out to the field and they looked at these different surfaces, measured the sort of roughness, came back, okay, well, that would be comparable to this sandpaper. And so it's done a very good job capturing the depth. The only thing I think is, this is a necessary simplification for this study, is that the sandpaper, I mean, it's industrially made, right? So it's far more consistent compared to naturally occurring surfaces like, I don't know, granite or acacia or a dead tree or something, right? The areas of rough to smooth in these natural situations vary more dramatically. But you kind of, that's a separate that's a separate problem, because you're not looking at, okay, well, do they need it to deal with a variable environment? Because you'd expect if they can just handle all three of these roughnesses, they could handle something that was very variable. But that's the only real big difference between the sort of sandpaper and the surfaces. The roughness, absolutely bang on, covering the entire spread that these geckos are going to be experiencing in the wild.
I didn't realize you could measure roughness scientifically, though, with this. Like, it literally just looks at like the depths, the peak to valley heights in the bumpiness.
It's like a contrast,
how far away
right?
is the bumpiest bit from the least bumpy bit? I would have just rubbed it and been like, yeah, that's rough. That's less rough. But there we go, it's science. And so, yeah, they tested them in a couple of different ways. So they tested all these different species. They first just plonked them down on each of the substrates, each of the different types of sandpaper, to see if they could cling on. And they also did a funny thing where they tied a little harness around the gecko with fishing wire and gave them a little tug to see if they could hold on. And then they had something measuring the sheer strength of how hard they were hanging on, which is pretty clever. So it's this dual thing of like, can they stick on? And then how much yanking can they take? And
it gives you a more interesting sort of measure, right? Because the binary of like, can they hang on or not, is quite coarse, because you're only really identifying points where they fail to grip, and it's not seeing how close they are, how much extra capacity their feet have for gripping onto these different surfaces. And then, force is giving you something a lot more nuanced, essentially. A measure of newtons.
And so they wanted to see if they could hang on to all these. So should we talk about the hanging on first?
Well,
on an incline.
Did you look at the supplementary material on their gecko testing equipment? Did you look at the visual of that? Okay,
I didn't look at the visual. I did look to see what this Newton thing was, but I didn't.
It's kind of great. It's essentially two large slabs of what looks like just stainless steel with a bit of sandpaper or whatever stuck in the middle of it, and it lifts itself up. Well, it can be lifted up to its. They tested them at 45 and 90 degrees, and it's like one of those lifting bridges for letting ferries through. So you can just imagine this little gecko on this surface as it's getting raised up. I mean, they said it before putting the gecko on it in this case, but you could imagine another scenario that you gently rose it, increase the incline until the gecko slid off. That would be an alternative way of doing it.
Just seeing geckos do stuff they don't normally do is funny.
They're fantastic. I mean, it's just such a industrial-looking bit of kit to imagine these little geckos just gripping on for their dear life.
And so when they were checking to see whether they could hang on at all, they basically, at 45-degree angle, so this incline, they can all hang on perfectly fine.
Regardless of surface, right?
Regardless of surface. 45-degree angle, your gecko's going to stick. But then things start to get a bit more serious when we talk about a 90-degree angle, a sheer face. And actually kind of probably counter to what they might have. I don't know where it was counter, but basically coarse is easiest to hang on to, intermediate less so, and then fine, more difficult. And when all their claws are intact, they don't really struggle that much. It seems like about 90% of the geckos even are hanging on to the fine.
It's pretty up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So they can hang on to all substrates pretty well, but they do seem to be best at hanging on to coarse.
I think that also just highlights how whether they can hang on or not is not a particularly useful measure for determining the effectiveness of how their feet are set up, because they're so good. You're measuring the difference of 100% and what was it, like 90, 98, 96%? Like tiny changes at the most extreme 90-degree angle. It's going to be hard to sort of identify any big changes. Whereas there might be quite a dramatic change how close they are to falling off in those different scenarios.
Yeah. But remember how we were talking at the beginning about how Asian geckos tended to use their claws more for rough surfaces?
Right.
Well, they decided they'd test that out with these ones by trimming their claws. And they were very humane about this. They trimmed their claws and then they waited for a whole shed cycle in case they'd accidentally damaged any toes. It was all very, very nicely done. So they've had their claws trimmed, but they weren't hurt. And then after they've then subsequently shed their skin, they tested them again to see how having their claws removed affected their ability to hang on to these surfaces.
Right, the skin shedding's important as well because that refreshes their pads.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to keep
brand new pads
the same both times, is immediately test them with claws and pads immediately after shed, and then test them without claws immediately after shed.
Imagine a gecko. Imagine you're a gecko, you're eating the shed skin off your hands, because that's what they do.
Delicious.
Imagine the feeling of that old skin pulling out of all your thick recessed lamellae.
Imagine it's quite refreshing.
Satisfying.
Gotta be, right?
Yeah, but they cut off their claws and then they tested them again. And it turns out that the claws are really important for holding on, even on all surfaces. But what was most interesting was that it was the fine surface where performance dropped the most from having their claws cut off.
Right.
So it seems like these claws are actually very crucial in hanging on to,
and it's
not more smooth surfaces.
It's a big difference too, because we're talking, upwards of 90% on the fine surface at 90 degrees ordinarily with claws and pads. Then that's dropping down to like 40% when they don't have those claws. So, I mean, huge differences that really, I don't know, it's really emphasizing that claws in that scenario are sort of fundamental to their effectiveness, gripping onto that surface.
Yeah. And then they did a similar thing again, where they split them up into their kind of life history groups. So you had like tree dwelling ones, generalist ones, rock dwellers and shrub dwellers. And the story was pretty consistent, really. If you remove their claws, they're less good at hanging on. And their sheer force, they're really important for hanging on, essentially. And this was sort of more pronounced in the generalist and tree dwelling and rock dwelling that was in the shrub dwelling. But nevertheless, there's an undeniable influence of claws being important for gripping.
And it only really sort of becomes less apparent at the coarser sandpapers. Basically, the most extreme, the roughest sandpaper, those differences aren't as pronounced. But as you go finer and finer, they get more and more extreme, really highlighting the importance of claws for finer surfaces, for these less rough surfaces. I think the shrub-dwelling one, the other thing to pull out for it, is that it is the worst performing compared to the other groups in general. The shrub-dwelling geckos clearly don't have a lifestyle that demands high sort of grip factors compared to the more climbing ones. I think the other interesting bit is that the generalists outperform the arboreal and the rock-dwelling. So you've got these species that are climbing all the time, but you've got this generalist which is outperforming them. So you've got this, okay, is there something more going on there with do the arboreal and rock dwelling, because they're more specialized in their environments, have other solutions to make sure they're keeping safe? And this generalist needs something that's very just grip on anything, because I don't know where I'm gonna be tomorrow.
That's certainly what it looks like, isn't it? That's really what it looks like. The generalist is good, but maybe testing on sandpaper really suits a generalist because they're kind of...
Perhaps. Because maybe the arboreal ones, we were talking about the variation in natural surfaces, maybe they're very good at choosing areas that promote high grip, as opposed to needing a mechanical foot that can just adhere to anything no matter what. Still very good, though. Still high performing, but just not. The generalists jumping out is really, really intriguing.
And we didn't really mention the sheer force, how much yanking they can take, but they can take more yanking on rougher surfaces, thanks to those claws.
Yes, as long as they have the claws. You start removing the claws, things start getting equally as bad.
So what's interesting here is that, contrary to Asian geckos, where smooth surfaces are generally stuck to with pads and rough surfaces are stuck to with claws, it seems like these Australian Diplodactylid geckos work together. The claws and the pads kind of work together to help them grip rough surfaces. So these adhesive pads may be kind of a backup when their claws become blunt or damaged. And because they have these leaf-like lamellae, which are different to the Asian geckos, that might help them with the kind of shapes of the rough surfaces that they're encountering.
Right. Is their pads are sort of differently adapted, differently sort of optimized, and the claws are making up the difference.
But yeah, bit of a shake-up really for the world of geckos.
It's surprising. Yeah, I think it's surprising. I certainly would have expected the opposite. And it's kind of, I want to know more about sort of what got them to this spot and what in the past has sort of caused Asian geckos and sort of Asian gecko families to be basically having a different solution to essentially the same problem, but using very similar tools, but them just being set up slightly differently.
Yeah. It's quite complicated, really, unsurprisingly, as it's natural. There we go. So really cool Australian geckos holding on to surfaces both with their pads and their claws, and actually claws providing attachment in even smooth surfaces, which was previously thought to be mostly a pad thing in Asian geckos. So there we go. So we've got a new species, which I would imagine is somewhat sticky. It should be able to stick to some stuff. So this is by Li, Shi, Liu, Zhao, Gao, Wang, 2025. A new species of the Boulenophrys complex from Hubei, China. Zoosystematics and Evolution. So
it's a lovely little brown frog.
Yes,
I mean,
it is. I think it's selling it a little short.
It is. I'm purposely underplaying actually how sort of
it's beautiful.
Good looking this frog is. It's got a beautiful. Oh, how would you describe that pattern? It's sort of a cross between splotches and stripes. I feel like there's probably mottled. Is that the word?
Yeah.
So you've got darker brown background, lighter brown sort of splotches that are outlined with sort of almost pale tan. So it gives this lovely sort of triple color effect with kind of orangey eyes.
Yeah, it kind of looks like desert camouflage, the back of the frog. And the eyes are the same color as the body almost, which is kind of cool. The eyes are quite well disguised. There's like a pattern that runs through the eye. It's pretty
Your little
nifty.
sort of stripes of brown. There's stripes on the back of the legs too, that kind of giving that classic tigery look on the backs of frogs' legs. I think that's that's pretty widespread.
And this is a species of Asian horned toad in the genus Boulenophrys, but it doesn't actually look like it has horns to me. I can't see any notable horns. Are they calling it horned?
Yes. The recommended English name is the Changyang horned toad.
Yes, and they've called it Boulenophrys Changyanensis.
You can
Changyang
see
County.
how it's related to other more obviously horned species, so because it's got that sort of pinched point above the eye. If you were to sort of grab its eyebrows and sort of pick them up and stretch those out, you would get more towards that classic horned toad aesthetic.
And interestingly, it looks like most of them have got a pattern, like a band that runs all the way up the point of the eye. So that kind of makes it look more horned. And
Yes.
I imagine that serves to break up the outline like a horned eye would.
Yes, and potentially exaggerating those points.
Or at least I should say, break up the outline like we assume a horn is intended to do. Because we don't really know why they have the horns on the frogs.
So you're saying what we need is to construct models of horned toads with prominent horns and then varying lower levels of horns, leave them in the forest, make them out of something that's pliable, that leaves indentations, and then see what comes and bites all these different created models of various levels of horn. And yeah, you'd expect the ones with less horns to be more bitten upon.
And then we could give it a whimsical title like horniness and tastiness. Something. They're related.
A slam dunk. There you go.
Nice.
Checks
So,
can be
is it
mailed to, I think, either of us if you wanted to fund horned toad research. I think.
No, become a Patreon. This is the kind of thing that we might spend it on. So,
Oh, if only.
no, that would be food. So distribution and habitats. This is a species which is only known from Hubei province. It's quite central China. Elevations of 600 meters. When they found them, they were on stones in streams surrounded by evergreen broadleaved forests. Apparently there's quite a good forest left over in this Hubei province. Yeah, we're always talking about DNA and how sometimes the DNA evidence is a little bit less than what you might want. This species description definitely falls into that category. It's just a couple of strands of small lengths of mitochondrial DNA. But I think the species is justified by its geographical isolation. It seems like it's on its own. It's an island.
I mean, we don't really make any assertions one way or the other, I think is probably the way to go.
But so Changyang is this part of the Wuling Mountains. It's got really complex geological history, well-preserved vegetation, like I said. So hopefully that's a good sign. Good sign for these frogs to keep doing their froggy thing long into the future.
Yeah, they're kind of little guys. I mean, not tiny, but what are we talking? We're talking an SVL of about 4 centimeters, 4.5 centimeters at absolute maximum.
They're tiny.
So
That's not small. Quite small. Quite small.
I mean,
But
this
there we
is the thing. I mean, that's small as far as in my mind how big an animal is, but at the same time, there are some tiny frogs out there.
Yeah, it's not the smallest, but it is small. So yeah, there we go. What's it called again? Boulenophrys Changyangensis.
Changyangensis.
Welcome to science. All right, cool. Have you got any other business this week?
No, I don't. No, just gecko feet and a tiny cute frog.
Nice. I did have one thing I wanted to mention. This was sent to me in a group chat by Andrea Pozzi. There's been a fossil description of a species of snake from England, and it might be a member of Acrocordidae, the elephant trunk snake family, which is bonkers because I'm pretty sure that's a monotypic. I think it's a monotypic family, isn't it? Acrocordidae. But basically, because of the weird vertebra this fossil snake had. Oh no, there's loads of them. It's not.
I was going to say.
There's loads of them. Yeah, there are loads of them. I think Acrocordus is a monotypic genus. Oh no,
No,
is it?
don't think so. I think there's Javanicus and there's one that's further east, is there not?
I don't know. I think Javanicus is a synonym.
Oh, is it? I mean, that I'm not going to argue the point one way or the other. Absolutely, it could absolutely be that.
Oh no, there are loads. Yeah, or at least there's a few. Unless Granulatus, Arapherae. There's at least two. Javanicus. So yeah, I'm making no sense. I don't know what I was thinking of.
They're awesome, weird-looking snakes. If you don't know what they look like, go look them up, and you won't be disappointed. Elephant trunk snakes. They have a very particular scalation, which I think might be kind of special to them.
That's why they're known as wart snakes. Yeah, because they got those bumpy scales.
They're almost like they kind of remind me of beaded lizards in terms of look, in terms of their scalation.
Definitely, and they're monogeneric, so the whole family only has one genus. That's
there you go. See, it was in there.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't in there. So you're being kind.
Something was in there.
Something was.
You need to look
in there. Some of them. So there we go. But yeah, I just thought that was mental because you'd just not expect to see one of them in the British Isles.
Well, I suppose.
I don't know how many million.
I mean, it wasn't
millions of years ago now.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't exactly as we would think of it today.
The late Eocene. So that's like millions of years we're going back. Late Eocene. So yeah, 56 to 33.9 million years ago. So a long time ago, but in the chalk hills of England, we may have had a species of Acrocordidae. So there we go. That just goes to show that if they make it back here, it's rewilding.
It's just a little delayed.
Elephant trunk snake living in your pond? Don't worry about it.
That would be kind of magic, though.
It would be. You'd need to heat the pond, I think.
Oh, these days, yes, absolutely.
I mean, back in the middle to late Eocene, probably roasty toasty, I would have thought.
You'd probably have bigger problems than a heated pond back then.
But there we go. So thanks to Andrea for drawing our attention to that. And we're not going to cover it in detail because we don't know anything about extinct animals, but I just thought it was fun to mention.
Very cool.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it from us. If you'd like to become a supporter of the podcast via Patreon, we're extremely grateful to all our patrons. That's patreon.com/herphighlights. You can follow us on social media and stuff. Not that active on there because just haven't been motivated to do social media that much. I think it's bad for me, but
that's fair.
We will reply to you if you communicate with us.
Eventually.
Better off just emailing us, herphighlights@gmail.com.
Will also be an eventual reply.
Yeah, but we get back.
We get there.
But I think all that remains to be said is thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.